Hello everyone and Happy New Year! Welcome to our 7th webinar. If you're new here, I encourage you to check out our past webinars on our HeartCount channel in YouTube as well as our community page. So today we're focusing on causal inference, a complex but essential concept. We'll begin by demystifying it together. So to start, I'll present a slide featuring a list of our previous webinars, followed by a concise overview of today's topic to give you a solid background and understanding. Causal inference, a diverse field with myriad methodologies, has been a significant part of data-driven companies. Although my perspective might diverge from theoretical purists, I aim to share practical insights beneficial for professionals. Remember, causality in business is about blending belief with quantitative evidence. So let's examine a real-world scenario. So the impact of price changes on mask sales during the COVID era. Here, we'll see how correlation doesn't always imply causation. I'll also discuss the traditional statistical view on correlation and causation, highlighting the need for more nuanced understanding in business. In ceteris paribus, or keeping all other things equal, is crucial in causal inference for isolating the effects of a single factor in controlled experiments like RCTs. It's how we can pinpoint causality amidst a sea of variables. Causal graphs, on the other hand, visualize relationships between variables, allowing us to map out potential cause and effect scenarios and guide our causal inquiries. And then there's conditioning, a technique that helps us control for confounding variables, sharpening our analysis to reveal the true causal connections. Together, these tools form the backbone of causal inference, enabling us to discern true cause-effect relationships from the data. So our agenda includes examining correlation versus causation, their application in business, and methods to derive causality from correlations. I would also like to recommend some insightful readings, including Judea Paul's works and the online book Causal Inference, and so on. So if you're interested, give yourself some time to go through this in detail. We'll explore different causality scenarios, such as one-way relationships between variables and the concept of a parallel universe in causal analysis. This segment will emphasize the importance of domain knowledge, data analysis, and theoretical understanding in establishing causality. So take a look at this graph. On the x-axis, we have per capita chocolate consumption, and on the y-axis, we have the number of Nobel laureates per 10 million population. We can see countries like Switzerland and Sweden with high chocolate consumption and higher number of Nobel laureates. This raises an intriguing question. Does eating more chocolate increase your chances of winning a Nobel Prize? To answer this question, we can consider 3 possible explanations for this correlation as noted to the right to the graph. The first possibility is that X causes Y, implying that higher chocolate consumption could somehow lead to more Nobel laureates. The second is that Y causes X. Could it be that having more Nobel laureates somehow increases the nation's chocolate consumption? And the third, which often goes overlooked, is that an unknown third variable Z could be influencing both X and Y. This could be a factor like economic prosperity, educational standards, or cultural practices that both increases chocolate consumption and supports the kind of environment where Nobel laureates can thrive. So this graph serves as a reminder of the complexities of drawing conclusions from data. And it's crucial to distinguish spurious correlations from genuine causation. Take a look at this graph. It shows a correlation between diverse rate in wine and per capita consumption of margarine. As margarine consumption decreases, so does the divorce rate. But does this mean eating less margarine could lead to a happier marriage? Of course not. So this is a perfect illustration that correlation does not imply causation. These two variables moving together over time is purely coincidental. It's essential to understand that data can tell many stories and not all of them are rooted in reality. Understanding confounding variables is key to identifying true causation. If you take a look at this diagram, ice cream sales and shark attacks seems connected. However, this is a spurious correlation. They rise together but don't cause each other. The truth is, higher temperature, which lead to more ice cream sales and more people swimming, might lead to more shark attacks. This shows why we must look beyond apparent trends to find the true story in the data. When our intuition clashes with observed correlations, deeper data analysis is needed. We'll delve into examples that demonstrate the interconnected and complex nature of causality and the importance of a thorough examination. Seeing is not always believing, especially when it comes to data. The graphs presented appear to link the percentage of female students in a major with average IQ scores or with language and mathematical skills. However, research confirms that IQ doesn't differ by gender. So these correlations may actually reflect different majors' academic demands rather than innate ability. It's a reminder not to jump to conclusions without a deeper investigation into the underlying factors. When the wind blows, the barrel makers profit. So it is a classic example of endogeneity where hidden factors might influence apparent outcomes. The difficulty with this concept is that everything in the world is interconnected and influences each other. It's not just the wind affecting profits. It could be activities driven by the wind that increases demand for barrels. So this teaches us to look deeper than the surface correlation to understand the true causal relationships. Next, we'll cover common errors like omissions of variables in reverse causation. The equation, the probability of y given x, is not equal to the probability of y given to of x. Highlighting a crucial distinction, correlation does not imply causation. On the left, we see typical errors such as omitted variable bias, where an unseen factor O influences both x and y, leading to incorrect assumptions about their relationship. For example, education and sales increase may seem correlated, but without considering economic cycles or other variables, we might miss the true cause of the sales increase. On the right, we emphasize that while correlation can predict the future, causation actually allows us to change it. If we act on education, believing it causes sales to increase without understanding the full causal picture, we may be misled by coincidental patterns rather than actual cause and effect relationships. Understanding these differences is key to making informed decisions based on data, especially when planning strategic interventions. Another common pitfalls we might encounter is reverse causality. So reverse causality challenges our assumptions about the direction of cause and effect. It asks us to consider if long tenure leads to poor performance or if poor performance prevents advancement, causing long tenure. But we'll be focusing on the omitted variable bias part in this webinar. So even without direct causation, correlations can be invaluable. When planning to advertise swimming pool toys, the challenge often lies in not knowing who owns a pool. Initially, you might see a direct line from pool ownership to toy purchase, but the link isn't always clear. However, when we consider the wealth correlates with pool ownership, we find a workaround. Wealthy individuals are more likely to own pools and thus might be more inclined to buy pool toys. But direct data on wealth can be elusive, so we turn to electricity usage as a proxy. Higher consumption often indicates a wealthier household. This approach uses correlation effectively. While we can't establish causation directly between wealth and toy purchases, the correlation between high electricity usage and wealth provides a strategic advertising angle. It's a method that accepts correlation as sufficient for the practical purpose of targeting potential buyers, even when the direct causality chain remains hidden. Moving on to our discussion on when to use correlation for decision making, we've encountered a fascinating scenario. So data indicates customers who buy beef and milk are more likely to be involved in car accidents than those purchasing ramen and soju. This poses a unique challenge for an insurance company looking to act on this information. The decision space is defined by two axes: confidence in the causal relationship and the balance of potential loss versus gain. When we have high confidence that a causal relationship exists and the potential gain outweighs the risk of loss, action is warranted. In this case, option B, targeting marketing to low-risk customers, is marked as the suitable action. This suggests the company should not differentiate premiums based on these purchase patterns alone due to the low confidence in a direct causality. Instead, it can act on the correlation by targeting its marketing efforts toward individuals who buy ramen and soju, thus reaching customers who are statistically less likely to file an insurance claim due to car accidents. So ultimately, this highlights the nuanced decision-making process when dealing with correlational data and emphasizes the importance of measuring the risk-reward balance before taking action. Randomized controlled trials are among the most scientific methods for asserting causality. RCTs control variables and use random sampling to pinpoint the effects of an intervention. However, they're not always feasible or ethical, such as in public health scenarios where you can't expose people to harmful substances to observe effects. This challenge is represented in the image, which likely shows the historical rise in lung cancer cases in parallel with cigarette consumption, marked by significant events here and publications that influence public awareness and policies on smoking. Despite their limitations, RCTs are vital for distinguishing real causal links, mere correlations within the boundaries of ethical research. In real-world scenarios where controlled experiments are unfeasible, we rely on observational data. Historical observations revealed the causal link between citrus fruits and the prevention of scurvy, predating the discovery of vitamin C. This case exemplifies how observational data can inform us about causality when experiments aren't an option and underscores the importance of domain knowledge and conditioning in uncovering truths that can lead to breakthroughs in health. In our case study on productivity factors, we've constructed causal graphs to visualize the relationships between various workplace elements. Before diving in, graph 1 shows that as employee satisfaction increases, the turnover rate tends to decrease. Graph 2 suggests that a lower turnover rate may lead to higher productivity. And finally, graph 3 indicates that higher employee satisfaction could be linked to greater customer satisfaction. These correlations prompt the question, is employee satisfaction important? The data suggests yes, as it seems to be associated with both lower turnover and higher productivity, which are key factors in a successful business. We find that higher employee satisfaction is linked to lower turnover and increased productivity, suggesting satisfaction is key to success. Moving to the next slide, we take this analysis a step further by drawing a causal graph or DAG, using only the information from these correlations. Here, we see a potential causal pathway. Engagement boosts employee satisfaction and leading to reduced turnover, which extends employee tenure. This increased tenure could lead to higher productivity, ultimately enhancing profit. Moreover, there is an implied link between higher productivity and increased customer satisfaction, which also loops back to profit. Creating causal graphs based on your work knowledge and correlations can simplify complex relationships. I'll explain the concept of non-cyclical directional graphs and their significance in understanding causality. This case study investigates how factors like job competencies and work habits relate to employee performance. Data links high satisfaction with lower turnover and greater productivity. Surprisingly, top performers work more, sending more emails and working after hours but receiving less training. This presents a correlation between the average number of emails received and individual performance scores. Here, the correlation coefficient is 0.32, suggesting a modest relationship. From this, we pose critical questions. Is there causality between the number of emails received and performance scores? Can we intervene in this factor to improve performance? And how do we measure the improvement effectively? The final piece of the puzzle is a causal diagram that proposes a potential relationship. Receiving many emails is tied to working a lot, which might lead to a good performance evaluation. But we must ask ourselves, does receiving a high volume of emails cause better performance, or does it reflect the nature of the work that leads to higher performance? So I can show you this on HEARTCOUNT right away. So let's go to Smart Plot. This is the HR dataset I've used in the example. I'm going to put y-axis, average performance, in email receipts in our x-axis. Okay, so a moderate correlation exists between emails received and performance scores, leading us to question if email volume drives performance or merely reflects it. By controlling for job position, by adding general position on our facet, we test the persistence of this relationship, demonstrating the utility of conditioning in causal analysis. However, we must also consider other factors like work volume that might influence both variables. Okay, so before jumping on to our hands-on session, I would like to introduce HEARTCOUNT for a while. This is the tool we'll be using to further illustrate causality in data analysis, which I've just shown you. So HEARTCOUNT is a SaaS solution that can assist you to make data-driven decisions that count. So anyone can upload, visualize, and analyze data with absolute ease. Scan the QR code right now and see how HEARTCOUNT works, and you can follow through the hands-on session as well. One more thing is our data community, Don't Data Me Alone, where data bonds are stronger than data bounds. So whether you're starting from scratch or seeking to expand your expertise, DDMA is here to guide you from the basics to the practical applications of data. Join the HEARTCOUNT community today and don't miss out on our recommended content curated to enhance your data journey. Okay, so now it's time to use HEARTCOUNT for a practical exercise. So please log in using the provided URL here, and you actually have to log in through your Google account to participate, but right now I've already done it, so I'll keep going. So once logged into the HEARTCOUNT tool, go to this new campaign section, and we are going to use a sample data set right here, and select the happiness survey data set. Okay. So this data set includes happiness levels and demographic information, and this will help us explore the determinants of happiness. You'll find a lot of variables. There's 150 variables actually. For example, like music or musical can be rating musical interest on a 5-point scale among others. So we'll analyze the relationship between life happiness and the number of friends, gender, and living environment for now, focusing on how these factors relate to happiness. So click continue and start EDA. Okay. First of all, we'll examine the relationship of various variables with happiness by using this small multiples feature. So right here, trends, we have to change this to happiness in life. Okay. So trends show that factors like high energy levels are associated with more happiness, 0.44, and while loneliness is linked to less happiness, it's a negative number. For now, we'll focus on this number of friends variable and to hypothesize that more friends lead to greater happiness. Click this to move on to our smart plot feature. To construct a logical argument, we must consider potential confounders like gender. So could gender influence the correlation between friendship and happiness? We'll examine the pattern for men and women separately to see if the trend holds across genders. I'll do that by adding gender on our facet. Okay. And another factor is the living environment. So does living in urban or rural areas affect this relationship? Now let's try dividing the data based on village town variable and observe if the friendship happiness correlation persists. And yes, we can condition this on both gender and the living environment as well. We're doing this to visualize the data with a bar chart. Revealing a clear trend correlating more friends with higher happiness. So I'm going to remove this for a while. Yep. And I'm going to add gender in our subgroup to separate the data by gender again, and then by this village town, removing the NAs. Okay. And see if the trend remain consistent. And yes, this analysis demonstrates how conditioning on variables like gender and location can strengthen our causal claim. Conditioning isolates a phenomenon while controlling for potential confounding variables. If the observed pattern persists even after accounting for these variables, it reinforces the causal claim. I hope this exercise helped you clarify the role of conditioning in causal analysis. Thank you all for joining today's webinar on causal inference. We've covered key concepts and practical applications, and I hope you found it insightful. For more resources, feel free to visit our channel and the HeartCount community. Okay, then, I look forward to our next session. Keep exploring and stay curious until then. Bye!